Doesn't look like it's liking that. I normally record to my stream as well. Oh, it's going. It's saying 0 drop frames. Okay, so welcome to the first live stream episode of Learning Programming. I wasn't expecting to get going this soon, but I wanted to... I guess it's going, so we might as well just get started. Today, we left off on a really good note yesterday because we just finished a feature. And you know what? I've got to mute that music so we don't get flagged. If we take a look in our play state here, no, in our main state, we can turn off. We actually play the music right here. We just don't music play. Okay. So in what we're doing today, we're going to be moving some... My bad. We actually just don't want to play right there. That's the string that actually controls it. Okay, never mind. Off to a smooth start. So we can move up to 5 stones off a stack in orthogonal directions. And those stacks are able to be moved on top of one another and keep our actually adapt our rendering so that they don't overlap one another. So like we can stack some on there and they get smaller than they were before we stacked them. Right? So we've got moving stones, but we don't have moving a stone into the next spot and then locking that in and then moving stones to another spot if there's still stones in our hand. So we need to lock in the direction movement, and then we need to add our dropping and picking up stone logic, and then we'll have 3 movements, and we need to do that all the way to 5 movements so we can move all the way across the board if we pick enough stones up and drop enough in each space. You have to drop at least 1 stone in every grid you pass over as you're moving. So I think we're gonna do... I'm gonna take a look at our code in our play state right here. So here's our first stones dropping. Here's our activating first movement grid. So that's the first part of our move where we decide where we move to. Then we have dropping and picking up and locking that in. And when if we're out of stones, we swap players, but if we hit enter, we're supposed to actually lock in what's... See, this is a little confusing since we have... This is our second stones drop because we technically asked to drop in the movement origin. So maybe we call this... This is already called first movement. So we'll put first movement grid locked, first movement stones dropped. That's right. Okay, so once our first movement stones dropped, just like how we're doing this, if it's a move type move and our first movement grid is locked. Now we need to keep... This is the hard part about programming, is like once it scales, it's harder to keep a handle on things, but we use these booleans here to toggle different logic. So if we're movement origin locked, but the thing is we can't toggle this off, because if we do, I think it'll change our render for our selection spot that we're supposed to be placing there. Let me see where we're doing that highlight actually. Where do we do that? Right there, moveLocked highlight. Okay. So yeah, we go through. I'm curious if we flush this in our reset when we do a player swap. I think we do. But we need to do something like this where we have to ask. Yeah, we have to update our legal moves based on the direction input first. Then once our legal moves fields are populated appropriately, then we can worry about adding selection for those legal moves, because we're actually getting our direction here when we're in our first movement locked part of our click detection. So this is activating first movement grid. But we would need to activate a second movement grid and a third and a fourth if they have that many stones. So either we tally moves activated as a we increment that as an integer and say like, hey, if we haven't, you know, if our 0 is first, we would set it as an integer 0, saying like we've got 0 movement spaces activated because we're actually toggling the highlight based on this input. So we can say if we've only done one. Now, how do we do this? There's a better way to do this. We can add. Here's the logic. If we're in a move type move and our stones and hand are locked, but we want to say something like that this, oh here, I mean, it's like if it's an illegal move and we're not first movement grid locked, do all of this stuff. Else if you're in a legal move. See, and this is where we have to have updated legal moves in this grid already, so that this would be accurate. So we need to update our legal moves based on when we lock in our next movement. And this would be and our first movement stones have been dropped. Up here we're doing this on a not first movement grid locked, which is where you click to move your first legal move. So we're saying if you haven't locked that in, then we need to make that selection a locked highlight, flush all legal moves. Why do we flush legal moves there? I think this is, oh, it's under a mouse pressed function, so this has to be activating that first moving grid. Now, do we go first movement grid locked false ever? I don't think we do. So if our button is clicked, actually, yeah, we don't need the else if here. We need the else if here. Here. So the else if will only run once, so if it's not first movement gridlocked. Yeah, see, we want to make sure we don't accidentally have people selecting stuff by clicking a move when it's not highlighting, so I guess we can say that we have to make sure it's a legal move and that our first movement stones are dropped. And not our second movement stones dropped. I don't know if that's the case, but I don't know how to program exactly yet, so I'm trying to figure out how to build logic like this, because it's like I feel like maybe we just put it in its own thing. This is only for the first movement grid when you click on it, and it's not first movement locked. Because the else if branching here can screw us up down the road when we have multiple. There's like a flow chart of moving where you have to select a square, select how many you drop, lock them in, and then it'll render the new moves. So maybe we just do this separately. See, because it's like I wanted to add them all under the one function, but I think I'll just get confused if I try to do it all branching like that. I'm not exactly sure though. Okay, we should need another end, I think. Okay. Let's just worry about our legal moves at the moment. So what we need to do is once we lock in, so this is movement origin locked. This is when I hit enter right now, that's stones in hand locked. Then this is first movement grid locked. Then after I drop stones, then I hit enter, then that's first movement stones dropped. So now if we're in first movement stones dropped, we need to render legal moves. Not over here, but only locked in the direction. So depending on our direction locked, we do some arithmetic to our 2D array to get us to have a legal move to be true in the next space. So right now, all the legal moves are flush to false, and I believe we do that right upon clicking enter once our first movement grid is locked. Yeah, if we hit enter and we had 0 stones, we should, we don't flush all legal moves here. So why are all the legal moves being false? When do we falsify all legal moves? We do that upon locking in stones in hand locked. Is that it? Oh, no, we do it upon a player swap also. Does that make sense? Yeah, we flush it upon a player swap. No, we weren't player swapped yet. Hold on. We weren't player swapped when I hit that. I'm just trying to see how our legal moves are getting flushed. So right here, once we lock in our placement, we have a legal move here and here. Now if we lock one in here, drop a stone, hit enter, we no longer have moves anywhere, legal moves anywhere. So I guess at what point did we flush that legal move? I think I do it right upon clicking or something. Yeah, right upon clicking in it, we turn it off. We make it no longer a legal move. But that doesn't account for the one that wasn't there. The one that we didn't, the legal move that we didn't click on. That doesn't explain why we didn't, why we had that to be false. It's like, it's a curse because it's like the game's working appropriately right now, but I'm not seeing how it's working appropriately, which kind of scares me. Okay, look at, we flush all legal moves if we're movement origin locked. That's what we do. That's how we're doing it right. Yeah, we flush. Well, then when do we assign our new... We have to make sure we assign our new legal moves after this. Oh gosh. Okay. Here's our legal moves when we're not first movement locked, which is our completely orthogonal legal move logic. But now we need to lock in the direction and only turn those into the proper legal moves. Now, we have this function here that flushes all legal moves if our movement origin is locked. That's what the comment says, but what it really says is if we're movement origin locked and we don't have stones in hand, then falsify all those legal moves. Else, if we have stones in hand, then we also falsify all those moves. Only if the stone control is a capstone or a standing stone. So I guess I'm a little confused why. Let me just turn this off and let me see what happens. Okay. I don't think this is working as I initially intended it. Now, it makes sense that we would falsify anything that is a stone control of CS or SS, but why were we making legal moves false if our movement origin's locked and we don't have our stones in hand locked? Okay, I know why we did that. If movement origin locked is true and stones in hand locked is false, that means we have just selected our movement origin and we need and we haven't locked in our stones. So there can't be a legal move on the board when we are choosing how many stones to move, to drop in our movement origin. So this is so that no legal moves when placing stones in movement origin. That makes more sense now. So the idea with this falsifying legal moves is that we do the logic to figure out what all the legal moves would be, and we turn them true, but then we ask a more complicated question of like, hey, if you were a capstone, if you were a legal move and you were a capstone or a standing stone on top of the stack, you're actually not a legal move anymore. So like that was the kind of reasoning to do it. Because it's the second half of our making our correct legal moves. First, we do all possible legal moves if we ignore some rules, which means we probably shouldn't turn it to a legal move in the first place, but it makes it so I only have to ask this question once instead of every time depending on the column, because that's how I had to do it because that's the only way I know how to do it. So let's continue this logic where we're gonna do our legal moves for our exactly like this. We're gonna do our legal moves if our first movement grid is locked. So we would probably want let me think. Look at this. I added a comment saying maybe this changes to if first movement stones are dropped, which I agree with, because once we lock in how many stones we drop, then we need to find out how many legal moves we actually have. So we'll put our first movement stones dropped, and if that's the case, meaning we just hit enter, first movement stones is dropped, so we just hit enter upon dropping at least one stone into our first movement grid. Okay. Now, if our first movement stone's dropped, then here. This is supposed to be the lock in directional legal move, but it should be like the way our stuff is working is that just because it's a legal move doesn't mean it would render the green highlight. It has to be a legal move and your mouse has to be over it, which is currently by design. So we don't do the highlight here. We just worry about the legal move, and our de-highlighting it is already taken care of because we've had it working for the other stuff. So we can say, so the thing is, we lock in a direction, right? We lock in a direction based on these booleans. We lock that in the second we, let's see this. The second we pick a first movement grid. Gosh, I am just all over the place. Right here. This isn't it. This is where we reset it. This is it. Yeah, once we click the left mouse in a legal move, and we haven't locked in a first movement already, then we lock that first movement in. We lock in this direction. So only one of these will become true. So we kind of have to ask. Let's figure this out, like, because this is really important for the arithmetic here. If down direction is true, that means the next legal move would be the row incremented, because it's one beneath. So let's write these down. So down, left, right, up. Now a down locked in would mean that the next space would be in the row +1, same column. Now a left would be one less on the column -1, and same row. Probably should have done this in ace right so you guys can follow along. Row and column. So one to the right would be, let's just see how fast we can pull up ace right. One to the right would be the same row, but the column +1. And then one up would be one lower on the row. Same column. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. This is not worth it. This is not worth it right now. There's what I wrote. It's just that arithmetic logic, right? So, come on, dude. Come on. Really? You're kidding. Okay. We lock this in. Now, at this point, we were calculating at our moveLocked row. We were calculating the legal move based on the moveLocked row, which we assign once we activate our first movement grid, but it also gets reassigned when we when we lock in our next movement. We're doing legal moves based on that. I thought we updated this. Here. This is what it is. We update it here. Yeah, we update this with our mouse position. So we lock it in whenever we click. This is our first movement. No, this is picking up stones from movement origin. Yeah. Then this is picking up stones if you've had higher than 5. So why do we do it here at the end? We do this here at the end of, if we pick up more than 5, we reassign it. And if we pick up less than 6, we reassign it also. Okay, so we update moveLocked row upon picking up stones in a grid. But I feel like that isn't really necessary. I feel like we only need to lock it in. No, yeah, we do need to do it there because we need to figure out what our legal moves is. Basically, the moveLocked is all to do with helping us hold on a second. Now I'm thinking of something. No, we should be okay. All our moveLocked row does is help us drop things in the appropriate grid, and all it does. And lock in the correct legal moves. Okay. Maybe it's doing too much. I don't know. But basically, I'm saying we need to update this again, which could mess up everything. But the way it's structured, it shouldn't move anything, because in order to reassign it, you have to lock in all of these movements already. So I guess let's just go for it. Where we need to reassign our moveLocked row and moveLocked column depending on the direction. So once we press enter, after we've dropped our first movement, so our second stones, after we drop our first movement stones locked in, we update stack control on our moveLocked row and column so that we update it. That's good. We update our stone control on the move we just moved into, which is good. But now we need to update our moveLocked row and column to be the next legal move. Do we do that here? Yeah, I think we do it here because we need to update this, and then our legal move truthifying code will run on the next frame, and then it'll determine which spaces are a legal move, and then it's going to ask if our mouse is hovering over it, and if it is, it's going to render that highlight. But actually, yeah, there isn't multiple. Yeah, we can actually kind of change the way of our game at this point, because you don't have to lock in. How we've been doing it is You pick how many stones you're going to drop in the movement origin, then you hit enter, then you select the place you're going to move because there could be more than one direction. Then you hit enter, then you drop stones in that one, then you hit enter. And then the way I'm going about it right now is that we ask to lock in the amount of stones again, but we know, or to lock in the legal move, but actually once we've moved twice, we know what the next legal move has to be. So I guess the question is, do we let the player select the next space in the grid so they can continue dropping stones? Or do we make it so that, well, duh, you've already moved in this direction, so once you lock in how many stones you drop in your first movement, you're already allowed to drop stones in the next movement because the direction gets locked in based on your second, on your second grid you lock in as a movement. I guess it's just up to us. We get to decide. Part of me is leaning towards just make them select the spot again, because what's working so far is still working, so don't break it. But what would be a smoother experience when you're playing? If you pick up a stone, pick up from a stack, hit enter to say to drop none, mouse over a legal move, press a legal move, dump stones with down, press enter to lock that in, then you'd have to mouse over the next movement stone, the next movement, legal move, lock it in, and then drop more stones. Or you just moved a stack of stones into the next grid, you lock it in, then you just dump the next stones in the next space, lock it in, dump the next stones in the next space, lock it in, and then you can drop all in a line like that. I think it is right to change it up here. So I guess the thing is, we need to force. I guess we just need one less boolean, because we've been doing it with 2 booleans, which is like movement locked and then stones dropped. But now we don't need to lock in movement, because we need to lock in movement, which is what we're doing right now. But we don't need to ask the player to lock in the movement. We just need to lock in the next movement. And then we don't need to wait for the player to... That should work. That the player wouldn't need to lift their stone above the legal move to see that it's working. They would just drop the stones into place. Okay, so if we're locking in our first movement stones dropped, that means we can lock in directional legal move. Because you have to, at this point, you don't get to decide where your stones are going. So we would need to detect our legal move, which is dependent on the direction. So if our top direction was locked, we need to do one thing. If our bottom direction, button, down direction, left direction, okay. So this will lock in our directional legal move. Now what we have to do is take the grid at which was our old, this would be our first movement grid locked space. So we are taking that space that we just came from, and if it's a top direction, then the next legal move is going to be the row -1 to be the next legal move gets true. So we say that that field's legal move gets true. Actually, we don't even need to, we only use legal moves. We only use the .legal move boolean to render a legal move if the mouse is over it. And since we're not planning on doing that, we can go ahead and skip that, and we can just say we just want that grid to be grid highlighted now, which is called locked highlight or something. Move locked highlight. I think that's right. Let's make sure that that's the darker green one. Yeah, move locked highlight is the darker green one, not the bright green one. So yeah, we can. I think we can do that. And this doesn't get flushed. Actually, when does that get flushed? We flush it upon a player swap reset, and we don't falsify it anywhere else, hopefully. Yeah, we don't. Correct. Okay, so that this idea should work. Where were we? Here. So yeah, if a top direction is locked, then the locked in next move should be the grid right above it, because we could do arithmetic here. But we should actually also, instead of doing this, what we should actually do is only change the value of our move locked row to be equal to 1 less than its current self. That way we can lock in the next top move if that happens to be the case. And then we don't have to do the -1 here because we update it and change the updated one to be rendering now. So let's do this for the other directions. If it's a down direction, if a down direction's locked in and we have just hit enter in our second space after our first movement stones are dropped, we will down direction means same row but +1, so it's 1 lower. So we're going to say move locked row gets updated to be row +1, so it'll be 1 grid lower, 1 grid beneath it by the time we change it to highlight the next move. I guess, you know, we do determine logic upon the grid you're over being over the grid. I don't know if we need to do a legal move just yet. It depends on how, actually, yeah, we shouldn't need to do it. We'll just need to do everything else right, obviously. Left direction means same row, column -1. So we'll update our move locked column to get itself -1. Then we make it so that we lock in that dark green highlight at that next grid. At the grid it would be moving into, but then we need to, I guess it depends on how we're dropping stones. Right now we're dropping stones if, come on dude. If down is pressed and we're in a move type move and our movement origin's locked, our stones aren't in hand, okay. So we're kind of doing it based on a bunch of booleans anyway. So we'll say, just like how we're asking if down is pressed and not stones in. Actually, I'm not sure where to add this. I think I made the decision to just keep it in chunks like this. This is only the first stones drop. This is only the second stones drop. So yeah, we'll just have to say if our first movement stones are dropped and not third movement or next movement dropped in stones true, we would drop a stone in this current move locked row. Gosh, really confusing. Now, the right direction locked in would be same row, column +1. So we update our move locked column to be itself +1. Now it's important we only increment this upon like one time, and it's the frame it's pressed on enter when our when we're in a movement, basically when we have finished all of our movement. Okay. We have a bug here. This should be column. No. Top direction, row -1. Down direction, row +1. Yes. Left direction, column -1, column -1. This should be column. Right direction, column +1. Move locked column here. Okay, that should be right. Okay. So I guess we don't really... We do this logic based on not even if it was clicked in a legal move. I'm actually kind of confused now. How are we ensuring... Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I'm kind of thinking this is jacked. Let me see if you can drop stones without locking anything in. Move type move. Yeah, you can't, because down switches the move type. But then it's like I'm in disbelief that my code's actually working. What I'm confused about is... Oh no, we do ask if it's a legal move. We do ask. Okay. We ask if it's a legal move when we're picking up... Okay. I have to remember that this is after a click too. Yeah, this is after a mouse button click. So once it's clicked, if we're in a move type move and that grid was legal and our occupants are less than 6. So when would we do the locking in the next one? Okay. I guess I'm confused on how we select. Oh no, move an origin lock drop. Then we would have to select. Yep, then we're asking legal move again. Okay, this makes sense. It's just spread out so far, it's hard for me to keep my focus on it. Gotcha. Okay. So now we keep stones in hand locked, so this is actually... Once we lock stones in hand, it's locked until you're done with the move. But... yeah, I think we do need to add... I think we were right in adding it right here. In the else if here. So now if that grid, instead of based on legal move, we're not actually swapping the legal move this time. We're actually just doing our moveLocked highlight. But we can use that just the same. It'll be accomplishing the same thing because we're actually not rendering legal move. But this is asking if it's a legal move because this should only be... Actually, no, because we're not trying to do this upon a mouse press. We're trying to do it upon input press, but it's a down if down was pressed. Okay, this is so hard for me to keep track because we've got like dropping stones in multiple different places. We've got dropping stones here for our second stone dropped. We've got oh my gosh, this is so confusing. Did we add our directional... Where did we add our directional input for our new moveLocked row and stacks? Oh my god. Right here. Where do we do this? We do this, okay. Okay, so we do this appropriately. So we need to do something here if first movement stone's dropped. Because now our updated moveLocked row is populated, it's fixed. Then we need to say, see, and I had it right here. If stones in hand locked, which would be true, and our first movement grid locked, which is true, because we don't flush that, I don't believe. I'm getting so confused because I thought we flushed all these. Okay, no, we don't flush them. We only flush certain ones, which is capstones or standing stones as legal moves. So we should be okay to do this. So if our first movement stone is dropped, then actually, yeah, we don't even need to do this. We don't need to do this. Because we don't need legal move to be true, because we don't need legal move to be true. If legal move is true, all it does is help us render a legal move if our mouse is over it, but at this point, we just need to allow stone drops in it. So let me see if the third direction is working when we lock it in. Well, this would be really nice if our third direction stone spot is rendering right. So we pick up 5, we pick up a space. Now upon hitting enter, this stone, upon hitting enter, we should lock in, we should be triggered first movement stones dropped, which means our moveLocked row gets updated to be our direction, which should be a down direction, so it should increment this row downwards 1, and then it should change that move highlight to be true so that it should render dark green like this. Let's see, pressing enter. It does. It does. Now we just need to That's great. That's great. That's so great. It actually kept the functionality because we're doing the same thing. We're just, if down is pressed, we're copying a stone into the movement row, which is actually updated because we updated the movement row upon locking in that movement. We just didn't account for updating our mouse in hand. We added a value to make sure we couldn't drop more stones than we couldn't pick up as many stones as we dropped off, to make sure we could only pick up stones that we have dropped off. So when down is being pressed, since we aren't stopping it from dropping a stone, I guess, what am I trying to say here? What do we need to do different? See, look at this. This is exactly what I want turned on. Because if we're dropping stones for our second location, we don't want this code. Actually, hold on a sec. Yeah. This is wild. It's wild that it works, and then it's wild that it works because pressing down does the same thing, which all it does is take a mouse stone and put it into your locked row and column. And then if up, it would pick it up. See, this is what gets it messed up, because it's still counting based on how many stones were dropped in the first movement space, not in this new space. So either we add this and then re-add in new logic, or we figure out how to only decrement this if we're not first movement stone dropped. Gosh, dang it. And then to expand it, it's just hard. We need to, because it's a shame to just copy and paste all this code when it's basically doing it right. All we need to do is only increment the value of which it's actually dropped in. So if we're dropping our first stones, which we already have a couple booleans, but I don't think we have. Because we're doing this upon first movement grid locked, but we don't flush first movement grid locked after doing it. Okay, never mind. I don't know how to do this smarter. I'm pretty sure this line of code is responsible for dropping stones into let's turn this on and we'll see if this stops dropping stones in our third space by pressing up and down once we lock in our first movement stones dropped. Jesus. Okay. Lock it in, drop a couple stones, lock it in. Now it's locked in, and if we press down and up, it no longer drops the stones there. So yeah, this was the line of code. But the thing is, it modifies something, so we almost need this code just as it is. We need to fix it, which we can do. We can use the same tag. Let's see. We can use this tag. Okay. We should be able to use this upon this increment. And say, hey, if we're not first movement stones dropped and we press down, then go ahead and drop a... Okay. You know what? We need to add... I really don't know how to make this code better. I just know how to hack it together. I'm saying that as if I know I can pull it off, but yeah, I think we need to do this a little differently. So instead of doing this, I think we should do this explicitly and say only do this code when we're doing this. Only do this code if we haven't dropped our first movement stones dropped. Now we can say, we can do very similar logic. Drop stone in origin lock space, yeah. Actually, no, this is the second stone drop. So first movement grid's already locked. So this is dropping it in the first movement. Drop stone in first movement. First movement grid. So there's the origin space, first movement grid, second origin grid, up to fourth, for a total of, yeah, 4 moves at the biggest. So this drops stones in the... Okay. So look, we need to do something very similar. Except this should be... this. Okay. So we'll do this alternative down one. Left.keyboard.was pressed. And we still have an occupant in our mouse stone. And we're not third movement locked. Because this is saying if down is pressed, the first movement grid. Oh god. No! This is busted. This is busted. Because we have another if down is pressed over here, don't we? No? We have another down is pressed over here. If we're not stone in hand locked, which won't be the case at this point. We... Actually, okay. Okay. Maybe it will work. Where were we? Here. Okay. So if I'm going to do something kind of sneaky here, which is say this is if our first movement stones have not been dropped yet. So this is dropping in our second. This is where it gets confusing because I call it second stones dropped, but it should be drop in first movement grid. Let's just keep it, which is our second stone movement, which is hard to keep in my brain. Because it's the first movement grid, the first time stones were actually dropped, because the first stone, the movement origin, you don't really drop stones in there, you just don't pick them up, if you think about it. Because we have it default to pick them all up, and then you drop off how much you didn't want to move, then you lock in your moves. So the second stones drop is actually this first movement stones dropped, which I admit is confusing. But now, if up is pressed, if down is pressed, and we still have an occupant in our mouse stones, and our third movement is not locked, our second movement, sorry. And this means we need to go to our reset board function and add this value getting flushed. So here we'll put under, not only under our reset, but under our reset board here. So we'll put first movement stones dropped and then second movement stones dropped also. And by omitting this legal move stuff, we don't have to do this movement locked boolean as well, like we have been keeping track of. At least I think that's the case. So second movement stones dropped, second movement stones dropped. So we wouldn't lock this in until we hit enter, and first movement stones. Actually, hold on. Here, okay. Oh, I'll get to it. I'll get to it when I get to it. Let me just see. So yeah, down is pressed. We need to basically do all the same stuff. We need to move our mouse stone into our updated moveLocked. We need to update our occupants in our mouse stone, and then we need to update the amount of occupants in the stone we just dropped it in. I think that's all valid still. See, this else if actually needs to be here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then we need the same with up. We need another else if up was pressed. See, this is where we need to update. We actually need another variable because we need to keep track of how many we drop. So instead of, wow, don't we do that? I'm confused. I would think, oh no, yeah, we decrement it here. We should increment it. Movement stones dropped. Oh, bro, my brain's about to burst. We should be doing this for this. We should be updating this dropped in movement, dropped in first movement. Upon pressing down, we should be incrementing it, but we're not. What the heck? How does that work then? If we press up, yeah, that's like the whole deal. If we press up, it'll go lower by 1. We can only pick up a stone if we have first movement more than 1. We must have accidentally deleted this. Let me see if this runs. Great. The debug didn't give much. 697 needs an end. That means we're just missing a then somewhere, or some unfinished statement. Here. Oh God, this is not gonna work. I don't know what I messed up. We should be okay there. You know what? We don't need this end. Because this is in between an else if. Does that work? I'm seeing if our stones are locked to how many we can drop and pick up. Okay. It is. Oh, see, look. I can't pick up a stone. I can't pick up a stone anymore. I think we are missing this. Stack order increment. Oh no. First, dropped in first movement. Increment. Let's see that. We must have accidentally deleted that. Great, we can't pick it up anymore. Shoot. Increment. I must have missed. Did we delete that line? Okay. It looks like we did accidentally delete that line, but let's see. If we lock in our next space, then pressing down does allow us to drop, but it does not do it correctly. Maybe we are onto it though, because I think yeah, we need to. We really do need a dropped-in second movement. Increment just like we do here for the first one. Because that controls how many we can drop or not. But we should have been able to at least drop all our stones, I feel like. Let's see though. Oh my god, oh my god. Okay, so this is dropping in second movement, which is our third grid, basically. Second movement grid. Now, when we drop it, as long as we have an occupant, we should be able to drop it. But then we need to decrement our, or actually increment our stones dropped in second movement. So we'll increment it because we now have a value. We have dropped one in the second movement, and we can only dump one, which, yeah, we should have been able to dump. Hold on a second. We should be able to drop all our stones in that third grid at least, but I don't think we were able to. Lock Lock it in, lock it in, lock it in. Huh. I don't know what's going on. It was working before we added this. This not. And our second movement stones dropped should initialize to false. Yes, it does. Oh, okay, okay, never mind. This is... I might have tried to pick up a stone before dropping all of them, so let me just maybe try. One of these. So we're going to do an else if to pick up dropped in second movement. And this should be in that second movement. Stones dropped. Then what we need to do is all of our dropping stone logic in our updated locked column. So we would need to basically copy all this. I shouldn't copy, I know that. I just don't know how to do it different. We don't need an end here. We need to decrement our dropped in second movement. Okay, now let's see if we can drop off and pick up in that third space. It's not rendering in our mouse grid, but we are able to pick it up. That's so weird. Bro, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. If we take out all of this, and we take out all of this, and we take out this comment again, and we take out this comment again, are we allowed to drop stones into our second movement grid? Select, select, drop, 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 pick up, pick up. It works fine. It works as expected. Except there. Except when we try to pick up more than we have. So, what's... Yeah, we need to move all this stuff, man. We need to move all this. I mean, we need to leave this alone and move all the actual stuff into another block. Because I think if we leave this on, oh my god. If we leave that on, then we should not be able to drop any stones in our third grid, which gives us the chance to write the correct code. Yes. So it doesn't crash, it doesn't do anything if we press at this point. So that's when we need to close this first movement grid locked and make a new block called second movement grid locked. And if that's the case, we just need to do a different set of logic here. So we're asking if move type is move, and it's actually going to be and our we don't have a boolean called second movement grid locked, but what we do have is a boolean that we trigger once we lock in the second movement grid, and that boolean is called dropped in first movement. So the logic for our second movement grid is determinant on dropped in first movement becoming true, which happens at the end of a first movement turn. So if our second movement grid is locked, then we need to do our logic if love.keyboard.was pressed down, we need to drop a stone. And if up is pressed, then we need to pick up a stone into our mouse stones, and we've already done. I don't like this, needing to copy the code over like this, but I don't know how to trigger the things only. I've tried it doing in else-ifs in here, and it broke, so I don't know what's going on. What we do is we play a sound, we do all this. So look, this is all we do for a dropped in movement. So we can say, hey, this is all our down logic. Now we still need to do this mouse. Remember, like, everything worked except for how much we picked up, and that's a result of this boolean needing to do dropped in second movement. So we increment this. Now if we press up and dropped in second movement, we're trying to make it so that we can only pick up a stone that we have dropped. So dropped in second movement would have to be bigger than or equal to 1, or we can do bigger than 0. To be consistent, I'm going to do greater than or equal to 1, because that's what I have it on the other one. But we could do greater than 0. And then if we press up, we need to decrement this bad boy and play the stone sound. And I guess at this point, we can look to see if it's even making the stone sound and then not doing anything, to see if this line of code is actually executing as expected. So move type move, lock it in, drop. Okay, so I'm going to press down and let's see if it makes a sound. It does, and it drops stuff. So this isn't quite working as expected. Oh, no. Dropping, okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. We just need to do the rest of the logic for our pickup stones. I forgot we did the drop stone logic already, but yeah, we need to do all of this for our pickups. Which we've already got the decrement. This is what we need. Okay. Actually, that's fine. I think that's okay. Now, we have this, if up was pressed and dropped in second movement is greater than or equal to 1. And here we have if up is pressed and dropped in first movement is greater than or equal to 1. And not first movement dropped. Okay, so maybe we do it and... No, we don't need the and... Actually... not first movement dropped, then if... See, look, I'm using two different variables here. Dropped in first movement and then first movement stones dropped. So, yeah, we don't need this if dropped in first movement. We need this if first movement stones dropped. I think. Let's see. Let's see if we crash into that third grid, or we don't. Let's see. Yeah, we shouldn't be able to drop more. Okay, so we need to drop a stone only if down is pressed and our mouse stone occupants is greater than or equal to 0. Then we're able to drop a stone. So we shouldn't be able to drop infinite stones, and we should only be able to pick up what we've dropped. So let's see. Dunk, 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 dunk. Okay, drop 1, 2, 3. Okay, greater than or equal to 1 actually. I don't know if Twitch is still streaming. I've never done this before. Okay, that looks to be it. I can't pick up more than I've dropped, and I can't drop more than I had in my hand when we moved in the grid. And we can't choose the move because it's locked in by the direction, so let's test whether or not our other directions are working. So if we go up into our... Oh God. I want to change... Let me look at any grid 1-1 we have. Is this mainly here? Okay, so the good news is we can just find and replace the middle grid. We can do 3-3 instead of 1-1 here. If we replace, how do we do the replace? Find and replace. Replace grid 1-1 with grid 3-3 for this debugging test. Replace all. We'll try this real quick. So we've tested that a downwards movement gets locked in, but let's test upwards and the rest. So we lock in upwards there, then we drop however many we want and see how that movement was locked in upwards. We still need to add our pressing enter upon a if right now we have our swap player, if we're in a certain move pressing enter, but we need to make it, if it's in a, yeah, how do we do that? Okay, if enter is pressed, where is it, man? Where is it? Should have been here already. Here. Upon, yeah, we need to add the if enter is pressed and our, let's do this. So instead of dropped, actually, yeah, we have to make sure you dropped at least one in that second movement. Upon, this is second movement grid, so then yeah, here. Else if return is pressed and dropped in second movement is greater than 1, we need to say, no, this needs to be and mouse occupants is 0, no? If love is, no, we would need to, oh, no, yeah, we need to do a bunch of this stuff. Yep, this is right. So yeah, we would trigger third movement, or we would trigger second movement stones dropped. Let's just do this. We would trigger our second movement stones dropped, which is a variable we need to give ourselves, and that will help us toggle the third movement stones dropped. We're just working on the second movement today, but we would update stack control for our current moveLocked row, moveLocked column, and we need to do this where we need to update our moveLocked row again at this point. Actually, yeah, we don't need to update stone control for this. We need to, oh god. Yeah, we'll have to go through a whole robust debugging phase and make sure we're doing all these values right for stack control and stone control. But basically we need to update our stack control and our stone control whenever those grids would be different. So like, since we're pressing enter in our second movement grid with our second movement stones dropped, I guess. Yeah, when we press enter, we would need to update our stack control for that current grid and the stone control for that current grid. But also, oh, you know what? Yeah, we actually don't need to. Yeah, wouldn't we update stone control for that? Yeah. Then we need to, then if our mouse stone occupants, oh, we need to update our moveLocked column for the next one, but we don't actually have to do that just yet. We're not planning on implementing that just yet. We can leave a note here though. Update moveLocked grid based on movement direction. And then we take a look up here. If our mouse stone occupants is 0, then we need to change move types and swap our player. So if our mouse stones are 0, meaning if we hit enter and we did not have any stones left in our hand, meaning we placed all our stones, dropped all stones, then we would swap to a place and swap our grid. So now let's try moving another direction and see if we can't lock in our whole move. So let's drop 1, let's drop 1, let's drop 1, 2, 3, can't drop any more. the rendering's working, and if we press enter, ta-da! What did it yell at us? 569, attempt to index a nil value. 569. 569. Really? Oh, it failed here. So we actually don't have an occupant. This is interesting. Yeah, it failed here because we incremented our column for our right direction lock for our next move, which we actually could turn off before we have that. No, we actually didn't. Let's make sure we don't increment again, right direction. Unlocking in another move. Where do we update that move locked row with our direction? Let's do top direction. Yeah, so if we only do this once though, if not. Do we ever falsify this first movement gridlocked? If we do, that would be the problem. Yeah, we're not doing it. The move locked row is getting assigned. I don't actually know. It says it failed at 569, and that line is shouldn't be a nil value. Our move locked row, we are only. Oh no. Okay, no, I get it. It would be a nil. So we would have to only do this stuff if move locked row, the one we updated, if that one yeah, is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then sure. Actually, hold on. We could do it before we decrement. We could say if move locked row is 0, then we're at the top of the row. So don't do anything. Don't update our move locked row. But so maybe we say if move locked row does not equal 0, do all of this. So if move locked row does not equal 0, I guess we can say greater than 0. Then we do this, and that will prevent the game from crashing because it wouldn't be trying to index a row at -1, which is why it was crashing. Well, it was actually crashing on the column being 6, which is also a nil, because we only have 5 objects in our 2D array. So if our down direction, if our move locked row is smaller than 5. No, see, look, this isn't even right. This isn't even right. Well, because this is only happening on a first movement stones dropped. No, it crashed. What the fuck? How would it crash here? Let me just continue with this. Our move locked row is greater than 5, or smaller than 5. then we'd go ahead and increment it. Left direction. That means our column -1. If our moveLocked column is greater than 0, then we can go ahead and decrement it. And then here, if our moveLocked column is smaller than 5, then we'd go ahead and increment it. I wonder if that fixes our crash there. Nope. 628. Update stack control on our grid failed for some reason. What is going on? Why would that have failed? Attempt to index a nil value. moveLocked row and moveLocked column is a nil value. What's hard is just because it looks like it's doing it right doesn't necessarily mean it is doing it right, so it's hard to debug this. So if I don't drop all the stones, it doesn't crash. But if I drop all the stones... Actually, yeah, I should have seen... Let me see that again. So if I don't drop all the stones... It doesn't crash. We still have stack control. We don't have stone control. Which... I wonder if stone control would crash it. Because our stack control is working upon dropping in there, so... I'm not worried about that one. Our stone control is nil. That's weird. We can still drop more, and then it crashes, motherfucker. Oh no. The complexity is too far for me to figure out at this moment. Our stack control doesn't work. Our stone control doesn't work. It crashes when we hit enter. I'll tell you what, we're going to turn off this whole update here. And this should make it so that we can't drop any more stones in our third space. So we can't drop those because we need to debug and fix all of this code to make sure it works right, which right now it is not. We almost got it working, it just crashes when we lock in our last value, which oh, you know what? This is why it's doing it. It's crashing here because we're not checking we need not and not, what is this? First movement stones dropped. And not first movement stones dropped. Let me see if this is fixing our stack control or our Because enter was actually doing two things at that point, I think. Screwing some stuff up. So if we drop them all, still crashes. 628, no value. Let's take this off for now, see where it crashes. I don't get why that function would crash it. It must mean locked move is getting set to something that I'm not expecting. Move locked row and column, I mean. Okay, it switched there. It switched there. So this is only probably breaking. Remember we had on pressing enter up here, we update stack control of our current stack, and we update stone control for where we came from. But here, stack control is what's causing it to crash. We're doing it to both our move locked row because I thought that's what made sense. Let's see. See, 628, that crashes it. So why would this be a nil value? Move locked row and move locked column be a nil value? It must be getting incremented incorrectly, but we fixed move locked row. We only increment it if it's not a nil value, or wouldn't be a nil value. Let's see. Yeah, see? Wait, hold on. This isn't it. Right here. Yeah, this is jacked. None of this code is working. I don't get why and not first movement stones and not second movement stones dropped. Maybe that'll prevent it from incrementing. The flowchart for my logic here is just awful. I know there's a better way to do it. That should not be legal at all. It really still is crashing. The only thing I have to go by is printing up this move locked row and column. And if that's incrementing correctly, then I really have no idea what's going on, but let's go ahead and debug it. We'll do first our move locked row. Okay, we're putting in our move locked row index there. We're going to concatenate it with another string of a closing bracket here. And then debug times 5 is actually right. And then let's get the column debugging as well. Move locked row and move locked column. Let me just call it move locked call, like this. We place in our column, concatenate, and then debug 6. Okay, let's see how these are incrementing, and if these are messed up, then really. Where are you at? 553? No indent. Okay. Okay, moveLocked row 3-3, that's correct. Now, once we lock this in, we should have a choice. Now, this should become row 3, column 4, which it does. We can drop in there. Now, once we lock this in, this should be row 3, column 5, which it is. And then when we drop it in, I think what's happening is when we hit enter, this goes to column 6 and then it fails. But I'm confused. If that's really the case, we can't even see. Because if it was a column 6, that would explain why it's failing there, because we're failing at 628, which is stack control. Let's turn off stack control and see what those values might be before it crashes, but it's just going to crash in another place, I think. Why did that one work? Because we had an occupant left. So if we don't have an occupant left, what the heck? It's working now? See, there we go. 561. Where are you crashing? See, this moveLocked row is getting incremented incorrectly. See, this line of code shouldn't be happening. What if we say, what if we do this a little differently? So look, before we do that, we say, see, actually, no, we shouldn't have to do this. We shouldn't have to do this. Because this should only happen once. This happens if enter is pressed. We've dropped at least one in our first movement. And not first movement stones dropped. What does that even mean? So this is to drop our first movement stones, which is when we lock in our direction. Now, press enter, we dropped in first movement. So what if we just say is greater than or equal to 1? So what if we just say dropped in first movement becomes 0 at that point? Because we only need that to drop stones in the first movement. So if we just flush this to 0 right here, then the next time this line gets called, this code won't execute and it won't keep trying to increment that value, which I suspect it's doing, which is causing the crash. But I really don't know. It really does. 560. Dude, it's crashing there. Dude, I don't know what to do here. This line of code shouldn't even be running at that point, because this line of code only runs if you press enter. And our dropped in movement is, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know what's happening. It shouldn't crash here though. We press enter, but it's, this can only happen if we're not first movement stones dropped, and as soon as we're first movement stones dropped, we get true, so it shouldn't be able to crash there. What to do? I'm so close to it working. We can put this somewhere else, but I just suspect that this is happening more than once. Because these should get locked. These should get locked in. And then we shouldn't increment these anymore, or decrement them anymore. No. We do, though. We will need to. So we need to decrement these in a better location than this. So what if... Because we need to decrement these every time we lock in, how many stones were dropped. Anytime first movement stones dropped, when we press enter, I think we need to do it here. That's the second movement grid, though. Yeah, we needed the first movement grid. This really shouldn't crash. I don't get why it would crash. Unless it's not having to do with this line of code, but that's what the debugger's saying. It nils at 560. Meaning this is a nil value that it's trying to access, but it shouldn't be trying to access that. Because yes, enter was pressed, but our first movement stones were already dropped at that point. Unless they weren't. I don't know, man. I guess let's print up if first movement stones are dropped. And if those ever go back to false, actually, and not first movement stones dropped. If we haven't dropped our first movement stones, then when we press enter, that should be right. So let's see if this first movement stones dropped is correct in the debugging. Let's do this. Okay. Let's do it. This is what's hard about debugging a scripting language, I guess. Because it's interpreted. Come on. Okay. First movement stones dropped is still true. So pressing enter should not run that line of code. I don't know what's going on. How do we ensure that we only decrement this and lock this in? You know what? We're doing this. Dude, yeah, this, according to my brain, this should be the where we do it. Because as soon as we know our direction, as soon as we lock in our direction with our first movement stones dropped, we give ourselves the updated moveLocked row. Which should make it... Yeah, why would it crash when we hit enter again? Why would it crash? This line of code shouldn't run when we hit enter at that point, because this only runs when first movement stones and dropped is false, but in the debugging it was true. So why would it run when we hit enter, and why would it crash there? Because this is nil. Like, I'm curious if we turn this off, it won't highlight the third movement space, but I'm curious if it would crash or not. We should still be able to drop stones in there. Yeah, we can still drop stones and it doesn't crash. But it didn't render the highlight. I don't get why this line of code would run twice. Or run, yeah, why it would crash once we hit enter. And our first movement stones haven't been dropped. How about we do it if we not second movement stones dropped? Because that doesn't happen for a little longer. Oh, you know what? Let me put this back on though. Okay, we're looking for it to render the third square with the green, dark green highlight. And then we're looking for it to not crash once we drop all of our occupants in there. So we can drop all our occupants in there and it still crashes. It crashed, look at this, it crashed one line different because it crashed on the down direction that time. So yeah, this line of code is still getting executed when we're pressing enter, even though our second movement stones dropped is not true at that moment. Actually, yeah, once we hit enter, I wonder if we just we need to do something different for this condition, I think. If enter's pressed, we dropped at least one in the movement, and our movement isn't already locked. First movement stones dropped. Bro, I don't know why it's crashing there. I have zero idea why it's crashing there. It shouldn't crash there because that line shouldn't execute. But I know Lua is weird about nil values even in debugging. I can't even drop one in there. Yeah, it crashed here this time on left direction. It makes no sense to me why that would be happening. It just tells me our code needs to be decoupled better. I'm messing up some logic in here, and pressing enter is just overriding it or doing something wrong. We almost fixed it. We almost fixed it. I just don't know what else to do at this point. Is there any time first movement stones dropped would be false other than this? Other than initialization too. In the reset. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's what's happening? Because we reset this to false in our player swap grid reset, which then makes enter, since it was pressed on that very frame, run again on this frame. Let me see when we hit enter. Oh my god. When do we do this player reset? We do it very last. See, if we had been... It makes sense. Let me see if it crashes if I take out the reset on that one. That would be interesting. It still does. 54. Bro, Lua functions in a way I'm just not familiar with. Or like I don't know why that's getting nil. Doesn't make any sense to me. How about we say, if these grids aren't nil, set them to true also. And then that line of code would only happen if this isn't nil. Which actually, if this thing isn't nil, does not equal nil, then we would go ahead and true it. This doesn't make any sense that I would have to do this. And if this works to fix it, I mean, this thing is being nil, which is stopping us from rendering it. I think it might have to do with switching the players, even though I looked at the code and the order of operations seemed to work. But I don't know what else to try at this point. Let's see if it still crashes. That would be wild. You know what? It's still going to crash because it's still nil and it doesn't know what to do with that. It can't evaluate it. 566 crash. It crashed here because this is nil. Even though I'm asking it, if it's not nil. So I guess since it is nil, I don't know what to do. Like, what if we say, if it literally is nil, then do nothing. But if it's not, then set that grid. Like, will that stop it from crashing? Do nothing. Can I do that? Leave an empty statement like that? If this is equal to nil, which it will be, that's why it keeps crashing there. then I don't think this is going to work at all, man. This is stupid. I don't know what I'm trying. Okay. I don't think this is going to make any difference, but let's try it. We almost figured it out today. That one worked. Stack control is working. Okay. We're not able to drop stones. Yes, we are. Look at that. That was weird. That shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have happened. Yeah, something is busted in our moveLocked update that we need to figure out. And right now, it's so moveLocked, our moveLocked row and moveLocked column are so interconnected with a lot of our code that it's really hard to change it without breaking a lot of things. So I'm gonna bring this. No. Yeah. We just have to figure out why this is incorrect. Why our locked row position, our moveLocked row and moveLocked column are getting updated incorrectly. I'm gonna leave a note. We're gonna say debug move direction locked and movement locked increments, because I think that's where we're getting the nil value. Because we're incrementing a value to get the next grid in the space upon a certain stone getting locked. All the stuff is so interconnected, though. I have to just go line by line, make sure we're actually not incrementing our moveLocked space more than once, or per move. God, it's so hard to explain. moveLocked row. When are we assigning this? We assign it if we pick up moves from a movement origin. That makes sense. We do it twice there, depending on how many occupants we pick up. And we don't set it other than that, do we? Oh. We set it right here. Yeah, we should update it there. Huh, wait. If the button is pressed, so if we click in a spot, yeah, see, this shouldn't crash it. This shouldn't crash it. Wow, yeah, we use it everywhere. Maybe we just have to move this. Instead of putting it here, what if we put it at a separate space? Well, what we do here is we increment our moveLocked row depending on our direction. So when we press enter in this scenario, so if enter is pressed, our first movement grid is locked. If our stones are dropped, no, yeah, no. Okay, so this will lock in a first stones dropped. Okay, so what if we say it should happen here, man. It should happen here because we should only do it once, and we should only do it once upon us figuring out what our direction is. And once we lock in our first movement stones dropped, then we can determine what our updated moveLocked row is. Now, what if we say, see, why would it crash? Why would it crash there? What's weird is Lua will crash certain lines that don't even execute in my eyes. I don't know if I'm just wrong about that. Let me just add another boolean called not moveLocked, not direction locked. So we can only lock in a direction, which will decrement our number. I think we're messing up because for whatever reason this line of code is getting called more than once, and we're incrementing a row beyond the place we're allowed to, which is making a nil object in this occupant that we can't access, which is causing it to crash. So I think if we add a boolean that says and not direction locked, we only do these things if we're not direction locked already. Now this is going to screw up future stuff, but I'm just trying to fix the current stuff because it's not even working right now. I don't know what button I'm just figuring out. Okay. Not direction locked, not direction locked, and not direction locked. Then sure, we do that. But if we do any of those, we become direction locked. Okay. Now we need to initialize this as false. We can do it here, and then we would need to add it to our reset also. Probably. Let's see if we still crash. Yep, 563. It's still crashing on the same line, man. But we should be direction locked at that point because we turn. Dude, I don't get why it's crashing there. I have no idea why it's crashing there. That's the same problem over and over and over. And it's like, just because the line of code won't execute on that frame, the fact that that spot would be a negative nil member. And you know what? We're probably only finding this out because our grid 3-3 makes it so that by the end of our second move, we're at the end of a grid, which will make it nil anyway. I'm wondering if we put it at like 2-3, if we can go all the way to the right and have it not crash. Still doesn't fix our problem, but I'm kind of curious. So our grid 3-3, if we find and replace all that with 2-3, then we build out all the way to the right. Let's see if that actually build it all the way down. Let's do that because I did that wrong. So we'll drop some here. It seems to be okay with that. See, look. We even had the fourth one there. That's exactly what we want, and we just don't want it to crash on the nil value here at the end. Something's going on that I'm just not quite understanding with Lua. I don't get why it would crash at playstate 564, because at playstate 564 we're referencing something that shouldn't be referenced because the condition is not satisfied. We don't press enter without our first movement stones being dropped here. I don't know. I don't know where to even begin on fixing that, but probably be just looking through code and trying to figure it out. Let's take a look at our git diff. It's probably going to be a mess. We added a second movement stones dropped and a second movement dropped and second movement variable. Come on, man. What are the odds you think we could find a bug in our git diff here? See, I think this was a good change because then there was no chance of us accidentally dropping more than one stone if we have already locked in our first movement stones dropped. I think all that makes sense. This all makes sense. We update it with the new. This is what's screwing us. I think because the only way we've been turning this stuff nil is that this line of code gets called more than once, and it shouldn't. So I don't know why that's the case. Because it's like if Lua is crashing on this line, doesn't that mean that this line just executed? I don't know how interpreted languages work versus the compiled ones when it comes to that sort of stuff, but this is a problem I run into Lua all the time, where I have to populate nil classes with dummy values so that they don't crash. Even in the debugging, I have to do that. I'm not sure why it's crashing in that spot over and over and over. Yeah, we didn't even decide to do that because we went a different route. Instead of locking in legal moves, we actually just determined. I don't know what to do. Okay, well, we almost fixed it. I'm gonna add everything with a commit message saying added second movement. I want to do added second movement drops, but busted moveLocked increment upon second movement being on a border. I don't know what else to to call it, but that'll give us enough details to run with it tomorrow. So I'm gonna end the stream and then I'll be back tomorrow, just like I try to commit 5 minutes every day to this programming adventure. So I'll post tomorrow again, and hopefully we'll fix this problem and then move on to the next one.